Hey, welcome to Prophecy Roundtable. Tonight we are looking at Joel chapter 3. This is where the Lord is going to gather the nations. Do you know where he gathers them? Well, that is really important. He's going to gather them to the valley of Jehoshaphat. All right, we're going to take a look at that tonight. And this is a big deal. And I'll tell you what's really cool is that Armageddon is right next door to it. All right, so we have, of course, my wonderful co-hosts who are standing by. And why don't we just, what do you guys want to do? Should we read it first and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it? Is that something to plan? Or at least,
yeah.
Zechariah first or Joel first?
Never is a bad thing to start with scripture.
Okay. Yeah.
Scott,
so
are you hearing
those
break
days
up?
at that time when I bring back the captives? Yeah, there seems to be some weirdness with my computer. So maybe somebody else read Joel chapter 3. How about that?
I can't see it.
I'll have to pull up my phone.
All right, I got it. Hold on. For whatever reason, my computer has been acting kind of weird.
Right now it's fine,
behold,
Doug. Why don't you read?
I got it. So behold those days, behold in those days, and at that time I will bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem. I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. All right. I mean, man, there's a lot in there already, which is pretty cool. So first of all, he's going to bring them back, right? This tells you, of course, that they were scattered. We already know that they were scattered. He did bring them back, right? He brought them back in the Second Temple period. But, of course, we know that in 70 AD, the Jewish people were scattered again. And he certainly has brought them back, at least in part, in 1948. But then he's going to gather all nations. That's the key right there. I will also gather all nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. So the valley of Jehoshaphat, this is what a lot of people don't know, is that the valley of Jehoshaphat is the Kidron Valley. All right, so you've got the old city of Jerusalem right here. It's going down into the valley, and then you've got the Mount of Olives right here. Okay, so all right, old city Jerusalem, Mount of Olives right here. Where those two meet, that valley right there, that is the Kidron Valley, also known as the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, again, so old city, Mount of Olives, right? Where is Jesus going to come back? Yeah, Mount of Olives. Okay, and what's going to happen to that mount? It's going to split in two, right? And this is the thing that I tell you can spend years kind of working on this amazing puzzle, this million-piece puzzle called the Bible. And you're looking at the pieces, you're trying to put them all together, and then eventually one day you just find that piece and you put it in place. And you're like, oh my gosh, I found it, right? So Armageddon, I grew up hearing that Armageddon was up in the Megiddo Valley. It's not. I mean, first of all, there's no, if Har Megiddo or Har Megiddon, as people want to call it, Har meaning mountain, where is the mountain in the valley of Megiddo? Answer, there is no mountain there. There is just no mountain, okay? You can it's a wide open valley. There's no mountain in the mountain of Armageddon or Har Megiddon, okay? So it cannot be up there. That just doesn't make any sense. I believe that this word Armageddon that is coming to us from Hebrew, but we're not, and we're told, that it's Armageddon, right? We're told that in Greek, but what does it mean? That's the big question. I would argue that it's made up of 3 words and not 2, all right? So 3 words, not 2. Instead of Har Megiddon, it's actually made up of Arema Ge Don. Okay, so Arema is a sheaf, right? So back in the day, before they had tractors and all that stuff, you had to take a scythe out into the field. You had to, of course, cut the wheat, right? And then as you would gather it, that would be a bundle, right? And then they would tie that bundle together, and they would put a whole bunch of these bundles together. All right, so think of it kind of like, when Boaz was sleeping and Ruth came and uncovered his feet, he was sleeping on a bunch of grain. Now, in my modern mind, I'm thinking, sort of like harvested, ready to go grain that already has everything. It's been, I don't know if the right terms are okay, but it's already shucked or whatever. I don't know, but it's just I just think of the little grain, but that's not how it was. They still had the stalk. All right, it still had all the stuff together, and then they would do that later. They'd process that later. Of course, they didn't have tractors to process it, right? So he was sleeping on basically a bed of straw, for a lack of a better word. Okay, he was sleeping on a bed of straw when Ruth came and uncovered his feet. What was he sleeping on? That was called an arema, right? That was an arema, right? I mean, and of course, that's got to be significant, right? That he's sleeping on this arema, and then his bride-to-be comes and uncovers his feet and says, "Hey, will you marry me?" I mean, that's an amazing story, right? I mean, you start tying it together with the end times because you see that word arema. That's the same word, all right? So it's a sheaf, and then you have the word gay. That's the word valley. Think like gay Hinnom, right? The gay ben Hinnom, right? The valley of the son of Hinnom. So the word gay is not a wide open valley like the Megiddo Valley, but this is more like a canyon, right? It's got sharp walls on the sides. That's what a gay is. It's a much more enclosed kind of valley. And then the word don, this is coming from the word din. Din means to judge. Okay, just like we have Dan, Daniel, right? And it's all the same root. So the don is the infinitive absolute. For people that are into grammar, you can go, geek yourself out and look that up. But it's the infinitive absolute of the word din. Okay, so it's the valley of the judgment of the sheaves, or the sheaves and the judgment in the valley of judgment, however you want to look at that. But when you see it and you're like, oh my goodness, Yehoshaphat, the valley of Yehoshaphat, is the same word as Armageddon. It's the same meaning. But here's the deal. You might say, well, where is Armageddon? That's a great question. It doesn't exist yet. But as soon as Jesus comes back, according to Zechariah 14, he's going to come back. His feet are going to touch down on the Mount of Olives. And guess what's going to do? It's going to split in two, right? Split in two. Now, this should remind us of a motif. I'm telling you, God is into recycling, right? He's definitely reusing this theme. What is it? Of course, we have the Red Sea crossing, right? The parting of the Red Sea. Remember what was happening there? He had just taken his people out of Egypt, and Pharaoh's like, oh, what did we do? Let's go back and get them, right? So they go and chase them down. Of course, God didn't just take them the easy way up by the way of the Canaanites. He could have done that, but he took them down along the coast of the Red Sea until they finally literally got between a rock and a hard place. Okay, so you have a mountain on one side, you've got the Red Sea over here, and then you got the Egyptian army back here. What are you going to do? And so what happens? Of course, people start to complain. Oh, why'd you bring us out here for? There weren't enough graves in Egypt, all that stuff. And of course, God does something really amazing by opening up the sea. Well, Pharaoh, I don't know what he was thinking, or if he was smoking something not so great, but he's like, oh, gee, the sea opened up and Israel got through. Maybe I'll chase them and I'll go get them. I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, I don't know. But, he does that. And of course, he gets creamed, right? Well, the same thing is going to happen with the Antichrist. So Jesus comes back, the mountain splits open in two. In Zechariah chapter 14, it says, then you will flee through my mountain valley as far as Azal, right? So you're going to flee through my mountain valley as far as Azal. We don't know where Azal is, but you're going to flee through this valley that I just made, right? So the earth opens up. The Jerusalemites, whoever's left, they go through, right? They're fleeing. And then Antichrist says, gosh, I think I'll chase after them, right? This is where it gets so amazing, because you have all these people fleeing through there, and then Antichrist and all of his buddies, they're like, hey, let's go get him. And so then they start to push in. I mean, and of course, it's all the nations. It's a lot of people that are chasing after this remnant of Jerusalemites. And as they start to go through, the way I imagine this is that Jesus, remember he was up on top of the Mount of Olives? Well, he jumps down. I mean, he's God. He can do that, right? he can jump down some 400 feet, and he can interpose himself between the Jerusalemites, who are now to his back. They're fleeing through this mountain valley, and the beasts and company that are now at his face, and they're chasing after the Jerusalemites, and he interposes himself, and they're like, uh-oh, right? And this is where the text gets really interesting. It says that then confusion will strike every horse and its rider, and it also says that the men's eyes are going to melt in their sockets, and their flesh is just going to dissolve off them. Look, this is not from a neutron bomb. I've heard that theory. In my humble opinion, I think it's kind of dumb. It's just not that. I mean, hey, God bless Hal Lindsey and all the work that he did, but I think he was wrong. I think he was very, very, very wrong. And again, it took me a very long time to put all the pieces together. And hey, if you come along and you're watching this, you're like, Doug is so way off. That's fine. Come up with a better theory, and I'll listen to it. And if you're right, cool. But I studied this, and I put all these pieces together, and they fit. That's what's so amazing. The pieces fit, right? So when we start looking at all this, so Jesus interposes himself. Now, and according to Habakkuk chapter 3, it says that he has rays of light coming out of his hands. That's where his power is hidden. Oh my goodness, that's pretty cool, right? Rays of light coming out of his hands. It's funny. I gave this talk just some years ago, and I was still kind of in with the pre-tribbers. And I had this one comment. This guy's like, "Well, that sounds a lot like the X-Men," And I'm like, "Yeah, so what?" He's like, "Well, I mean, guys, when Jesus comes back, what do you think he's going to do? Just sit around and just kind of twiddle his thumbs and just kind of whistle and do nothing? No, he's a man of war. He's going to kick butt. He's coming to fight, right? He's truly going to fight. Okay, so X-Men, oh yeah. In fact, the X-Men are not even cool enough, right? I mean, this is way cooler than Thanos and Iron Man and all that stuff, right? This is way cooler. This is God himself coming, I was just about to say in the flesh, but coming in his God stuff, right? And he's coming, he's coming, and he's going to fight for his people. So his face is shining like the sun. What do you think would happen if you got that close to the sun? You might start to melt. Just a wild hunch there, right? So the guys at the front, they begin to melt because of Jesus' incredible power. And the guys right behind those guys that are melting, they're trying to turn around because they're like, uh-oh, I need to get out of here. But guess what? You have this huge horde of beasts and company that are pushing them in. And so as they turn around, they can't get around, they can't get away. So what happens? Chaos ensues, right? Every man is now striking his neighbor, trying to get away for dear life. They're trying to get away lest they melt if they go into Jesus. So at least they have a fighting chance, against the guys behind them. But ultimately, they're going to fail. And this is where, if you look at Revelation 14, it says that he's gonna tread them like wines in a wine press, okay, or like grapes in a wine press, right? This is where his anger is going to be resolved, shall we say. It's going to be meted out. He's going to, again, tread on them, just like you're treading grapes in the wine press. Now that we have these canyon walls, it makes perfect sense. Now you might say, wait a second, I thought we were talking about the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Well, we are, okay? So if this right here, okay, maybe since you guys can see it. So this right here is our brand new canyon, okay? So this right here, right? So this is parallel to it, right? Or perpendicular, perpendicular, not parallel, but perpendicular, right? So this one right here is the Valley of Jehoshaphat, right? And so again, here is Armageddon. Here's the Valley of Jehoshaphat. These are perpendicular to one another. And that is where he's going to gather all the nations after he kicks a bunch of butt, and he's going to enter into judgment with them there. All right, I will yield at this point. So, Joel, any thoughts there?
I think Scott, this was his topic. So what happened to Scott?
Well, he might. Maybe he got raptured. Maybe we were all wrong about that.
My only opinion, I know you really push that this is a certain valley. It's in Jerusalem, everything like that. The rabbis are pushing that this is, Scott's back on. Okay. That this is the valley of Barakah. So it's like a bracha, it's a valley of blessing. And they say it's on the way to Hebron. So it's that direction. It would be south of Jerusalem, just a little bit, but in Jerusalem. Does that make sense at all? Have you ever heard of that valley at all? I mean, it's like they're citing 2 Chronicles 20, which I don't know off the top of my head. And they're saying that there was a battle there before. Hashem commanded Jehoshaphat and his army to refrain from battle, and he incited the attacking armies against one another, causing their destruction. So they're citing something similar to the 2 Chronicles 20 war.
I mean, that's interesting. I researched it. I didn't just come up with this myself. I looked at all kinds of maps, and they're saying that the Valley of Jehoshaphat is the Kidron Valley. So I don't know. I mean, we can go on with the text. I think the text, in my humble opinion, is clear.
This is Midrash. This is Midrash, Doug.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's not like it's Bible.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I definitely respect what the rabbis have to say. It says that in Zechariah that they're going to flee to Azal. We don't know where Azal is.
Right.
So maybe, just maybe, where they're going to flee to will be that valley of Bracha. That's a possibility.
Is that metamorphical in terms of you've got Az would be strength, like Azazel, but Uz would be, a stronger word, some strength, some kind of whatever, so I don't know. I mean, God speaks in different layers. So which layer is this going to be?
Indeed, he does. Brother Scott.
Before I say anything, I want to just show this. I am so thankful to be here, and my son was in this. That is an engine missing on a car that he got hit by an 18-wheeler going about 75 miles an hour, and the engine's gone, but everything behind that, where Cana was sitting, Cana walked out, and some of the moms started crying that he actually got out of that vehicle. So he received a blessing on life, and he and his mom and the whole family. So
that was just yesterday.
Very thankful person right now. So
Amen.
So,
amen. Hey, we are so delighted that your son is still alive.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
And not hurt bad. He's got whiplash, but hopefully God will use this to get his attention, especially with things heating up right now. So he may not have as much time as his dad and us other older people. If time is short. So
yeah.
But
glad he's safe.
as far as this topic, y'all started talking about valleys and locations, but I told y'all this on the front end. I was looking at Joel the other day, Joel 3, and it just leapt off the page to me. The fact it's very similar to Zechariah 12 and 14, in that the verse, the house of Israel's not mentioned initially.
Okay.
Ephraim's not mentioned. We don't see Samaria being mentioned, but we specifically see Judah and Jerusalem. And so again, this prophecy, much like Zechariah, for it to be the end of the age, Judah as a prerequisite had to be back in the land.
Yes.
And again, with all this Hebrew uprooter, fake Jew, conspiracy theory stuff that's been happening, and as more and more, like even, I'm starting to see it in, it really irritates our friend John Haller about what, like, say, Candace is doing, the reporter and others who've seemed to have drank the conspiracy theory Kool-Aid, which some of it may be true as far as the Kabbalah Jews. In other words, at the secret upper level of Judaism, just like Roman Catholicism. And so, yes, if they are Kabbalist, satanic, Luciferian Jews, there's no doubt we could put them into the assembly or the synagogue of Satan. But my point is, when I'm talking to anybody or trying to, because I usually have a quick thumb if they're not in person, as far as dusting off my feet from them, if they're very anti-Judah. But sadly, this is growing. I mean, you've got ministries now that are teaching only the Africans are the Jews, or only such and such. So that was sort of my focus, is this being a passage showing that no, it's Judah being gathered against. We're not seeing the house of Israel. And so Like I told Doug today, unless there's a major war in which the current people that live in the nation state of Israel, including the Palestinians, including the Arabs, including those that are Jews, unless they just get all wiped out, and a new people group who haven't historically, actually practiced the Torah and honored Shabbat and kept alive the feast days as a witness to the commandments and as that second witness to the truth of his word, not the rabbinic add-ons. But unless that were to happen in a new people group, whether they be Africans or Europeans or Asians or South Americans, get in Judah and around Jerusalem, then shut up with your nonsense about fake Jews. And I'm not talking to my two brothers here. I'm talking to anybody that has been deceived by maybe some partial truths. And now as a result, they're so anti-Judah that they do get anti-Semitic, in other words. And that's what we're seeing right now. I'm not surprised by this. John's getting mad. I'm like, John, what? I get it. But what did we expect to happen at the end of the age? We expected all nations, and right now we've got the United Nations, and pretty much every nation in the world is voting in favor of a bunch of terrorists who want nothing more than to eliminate Jews from the land, drive them out, and everybody knows river to the sea means no Jews contained thererein. So it's happening. We had.
I love what you're saying, man, because I think it's interesting that it's so hard for people to appreciate that God has a plan for the Jewish people. I feel like some people they come out of like Sunday church, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm Israel, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, man. And this is what happens, and I've seen it, I have listened to it. It affects me very personally. I mean, I have, in my family, there are Jewish people. I myself am not, but I have, by family, I have, a lot of Jews in my family, and I will fight. Okay. But that aside, why is it theologically? Well, I think the same blindness that has been over the church on average. Now there's kind of this sense that people come to Torah, Messianic, Hebrew roots, and now there's kind of a new blindness, but it's a blindness out of pride, which I think is probably the worst kind of blindness.
Well,
they start thinking that,
you know this by now. When someone now says, "Pray for Israel," I'm like, that's a pretty selfish prayer. We are Israel, okay? We are. I know what they mean. They mean the modern nation state of Israel, but that's where it gets confusing, and that's where what you're talking about, this pride issue. It's sort of an irritant in the shoe. If you start hearing things like that and you go, wait a minute, yes, Judah is no doubt 100% his chosen people, but they're no more chosen than the three of us or anybody else in covenant. They might have a different plan, obviously, as we're discussing. In other words, the house of Judah, the nation of Judah, the house of David, the end game is different. They've already been gathered back into the land to fulfill this prerequisite. And as John was pointing out today, as we were kind of discussing this, he brought up, obviously, Ezekiel 36, that Israel has to be back in the land. And of course, I said, well, that's sort of the whole house right there. That's sort of the very, very end game. We're talking about the prelude to almost the end as the nations are gathering. As far as how this gathering occurs, whether it's a supernatural harpazo-zapture, like for instance with Philip, easy peasy for the Holy Spirit. Okay, I mean the Spirit says, I don't want you in Gaza anymore, Philip. I want you over here in Ashkelon. And so Philip all of a sudden goes, man, I just got zaptured. So there again, I don't know how this happens. It could be we're all caught up from Colorado or wherever we are at that time, those who are alive at that time, and we're caught up to the clouds above Israel, and then we're brought down on. And so I don't like to be dogmatic about that, but as far as Judah having to be in the land, and actually right now us being kept out of the land by the nation state of Israel and by Judah's policies because they want a Jewish state. It's actually fulfilling prophecy. We cannot move back there right now if we wanted to. They won't let us.
Okay.
Hmm.
They might let you move into the northern
prophecy.
areas, up near Syria, up near Lebanon. They might let you move in there because it's really dangerous.
A little bit of cannon fodder. You know what's amazing though is, see, it's amazing how it all ties together, because in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus was speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees, and he has these list of woes. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you do all these things. And then he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I wanted to gather you, as a chick gathers its hen, a hen gathers its chicks under its wings, but you were not willing. And he says, now your house is left to you desolate. You will not see my face until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Right? So Judah, it's the governing part of Judah that rejected Jesus. Remember, a lot of Jews accepted Jesus as their Messiah. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands accepted Jesus as their Messiah. And, as the century went on, it was maybe upwards of 1 million, some people estimate. We don't know exactly, but it was a lot of Jews that believed in Jesus. But the leadership said, no way, Jose. And so because of that, we are now waiting for the leadership of Judah to say to Jesus, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. And that is when he's going to come back. I believe that 100%. Now, I don't know when they're going to say that. I think it'll probably be around trumpets, so some year, but that's my guess.
Well, as far as exact timing, I mean, again, my friend Steve Mutria, y'all know him. He makes a pretty good argument for Pentecost, and I quit being dogmatic. But if you were going to ask me to put money on something, which I'm not, I would lean towards Feast of Trumpets, definitely. But I put this up here because this is an example of what happens. People will take a snippet of the Talmud, which is no doubt blasphemous towards Yeshua. They will take some commentary from one rabbi talking about the age of a girl, and then they're going to apply that to the local rabbi down the street or the Orthodox Jew, and they're going to try to make them hate these people that do not adhere to the Talmud, much like Christians. Christians ignore a lot of the Bible. It's not like every Jewish person believes everything that's written in the Talmud and practice that in their faith. But again, there are some that I guess if they can get away with it and believe this way, they could. But even that doesn't necessarily, well, I'll put it this way. We certainly shouldn't cast a blanket brush against every person who says they're Jewish, whether secular, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Hasidic, or one of the many Judaisms that are out there. Judaism comes in many flavors, just as their Christianity comes in about 45,000 flavors.
Can you read this comment so that we can?
Yeah. Disciples should understand how the Talmud functions without the Jewish,
commentary.
Otherwise, we risk misrepresenting Judaism or playing into the hands of anti-Semitic slanderers. And again, I agree with that. I've never studied the Talmud. And so I would know enough to be dangerous if I was just quoting the snippets that someone had taken out of the Talmud, and I didn't read all 28 volumes, Doug. How many is there?
Yeah, I think something like that. There's
Jerusalem or Babylonian? Which one?
Well, again,
I've studied passages. I did the other Every Man's Talmud, which is like a paperback, like a 300-page book. But I haven't done all 28 volumes. I mean, there's a lot in there.
Okay, I study it every week, and it's like sermons, guys. Okay,
yeah.
And if you check out John Calvin and Martin Luther,
they
have Talmud. Their sermon. That's Talmud. That's their Talmud. And I've got John Piper down the block from me in Minneapolis. Yeah. That's Talmud.
Yeah, everything he writes is Christian Talmud.
It is. So
it would be sort of like, for instance, R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur got along great. And they differed, though, when it came to Israel and they 100% aligned on predestination. So that's where they were bed buddies. But they totally differed on Israel and eschatology. R.C. Sproul was a Presbyterian. He believed in infant baptism. MacArthur does not, obviously. R.C. Sproul taught amillennialism, and God does not have a plan for the Jews, and taught replacement theology.
Sure.
MacArthur is a leaky dispensationalist who basically is a full-blown dispensationalist. He just actually believes Jesus meant what he said, except maybe Matthew 5:17-19. He tends to ignore that passage.
MacArthur will say there's no evidence of the rapture in the Bible. I don't care. I believe in it
We're
anyway.
not even talking rapture now. I'm talking about.
But I know. But in terms of dispensationalism, he just believes it because it's part of the program. You have to believe it, or you're out of the club.
Well, we can all blame our ancient Jesuit friend Lacunza and Ribera for teaching us all that.
So the main thing is these are sermons, and the Jews have the right to their sermons, their Talmud and things like that, and all of the other writings. And the problem is every time we get angry with the Jews, somebody like in France wants to burn all the Talmud, and that was 700 and some odd years ago. And this has happened so many times over the years. And well, then maybe somebody should come and burn the Christian sermons, all the Reformation writings and things like that.
Hillary, I'm not pointing you out or picking on you because, again, I had this opinion and I don't study the Talmud. A, I don't have time. B, I'm not interested. Joel is. Okay.
Yeah, I study it. I do.
And to what I was
Hillary is a friend of mine, by the way. So
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And my friend Halisa Elwine, who I went to Israel with last year, I got home today a year ago, by the way. So my friend Halisa Elwine, she loves to look into the rabbinic writings, and what she's doing is she's looking into their insights, but through the lens of Yeshua that they cannot see.
Right. That's fun.
So she will take their observations, but obviously totally spit out the bones of anything that's denial of Yeshua, because the rabbis have not had insight on Yeshua. Their eyes were not open. It does not make every commentary that they made evil or wrong or I mean, some of them, again, from Halisa's teaching, some of the insights, and as she has explained it and taught me, have made me appreciate some of these things. I'm just
they figured out so many things, like the timing of when the Messiah should come, Moses and Elijah and Gog and Magog, so many things that we're like, yes, amen. Yeah, they missed the Messiah. We get that. But that was also God's doing, according to Psalm 118,
Yeah.
So, I don't know how it all works in God's economy, but, there's so many great insights. And if we would just slow down and not generalize too much.
And to Zechariah 12, again, for prophecy to be fulfilled, Judah had to be gathered in unbelief, because 2/3 are going to be killed, 1/3 will make it through, and then they will look to him, Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, Yeshua, whom they pierced, because they didn't pierce the Father. They pierced Yeshua, and they will mourn. For that to happen at the end of the age, they couldn't believe beforehand as a corporate house. I'm not talking about my friend Jeff, who is Jewish. I'm not talking about those who are Messianic Jews. I am talking about right now the corporate house of Judah is still they're still in unbelief in Yeshua, much as probably still 99% of the corporate house of Israel is still believing that because the church is a new thing, certain commandments like Shabbat, the feast, etc., what we should or should not eat, they're still teaching that those are Jewish. And so again, we still have this blindness in part to all of Israel from Romans 11. And then at the very end, when we go back to those natural branches, what is their belief but resurrection from the dead? In other words, in Paul is obviously well aware of Zechariah and Joel and how events are going to happen. And when Judah does cry out, that's resurrection from the dead, everybody. That's it. Their belief is the resurrection, and their belief doesn't come until the very end of this age.
That's right.
That's something I would be very, very dogmatic on. I show me where I would be incorrect on that.
Well,
not the specific events leading up to it, but the end game, the very, very end. And earlier I put one of our pre-trib brothers in timeout because he was just spamming.
Hosea chapter 5. It's such an amazing passage, right? So And here at the end of Hosea chapter 5, he says, therefore I will, like verse 12, therefore I will be to Ephraim like a moth, and to the house of Judah like a rottenness. Right. So he's talking about both Judah and Ephraim. I will be like a lion to Ephraim, and like a young lion to the house of Judah. I will tear them and go away. I will take them away, and no one shall rescue. I will return again to my place till they acknowledge their offense. Then they will seek my face. In their affliction, they will earnestly seek my face. The word affliction is the word sarah, which is tribulation. Okay, so in tribulation, they're going to earnestly seek my face. Now, the house of Israel, aka Gentile believers, whatever you want to call them, have to some degree, certainly been seeking God's face to some degree.
Formerly Gentiles.
I know. I know. However you want to call them. But
no, former Gentiles. I ain't a pagan anymore.
I know, brother. I know. You're missing the point here. So God is dealing with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Okay, again, there are believers in Judah, but it's going to take the formal acknowledgement, the formal declaration, right? Jesus gave us the key. He said, you won't see my face until you, the leadership of the Jewish people, until you make a declaration about me. And that's what I think is lacking here. Because remember how many people came into Jerusalem in Jesus' day, and what were they saying? They were saying Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. They were all Jews, right? They all came believing. They were like, oh yeah, Jesus is the way. Or they didn't, understand all the theology, but they were claiming and proclaiming that he was the one. But it was the leadership, the builders that rejected the chief cornerstone. Those are the ones that we're talking about. And so those are the ones that have to finally say Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. So we don't want to be against the house of Judah. We're for the house of Judah. My goodness, nothing's going to happen without them. We're going to be stuck here forever and ever and ever if they don't finally say Baruch haba b'shem Adonai to Jesus.
They will, or they'll die.
Well, yeah, they will.
But again, they will, because the scripture says they will.
Well, right. It looks like, according to Zechariah 12, he's going to pour out this spirit upon them, and they'll weep and they'll mourn. And so, yeah, and that's actually Zechariah 13, where they'll notice the man that they pierced, and so they'll cry, but they'll also have a spirit. So it looks like, getting a little bit before. We're in chapter 3 right now of Joel, where we're talking, but technically at the end of 2, we have that spirit being poured out on all of us, slaves, free, everybody. And then it looks like, if Scott, where you're pushing this to is in Joel 3, it sounds a lot like Zechariah 12, which means this is being poured out on them also.
I wouldn't say sounds a lot like. I would say these are parallel passages, and I paraphrased earlier.
I think that's what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, but I paraphrased earlier. But therefore, Romans 11, starting in verse 13. There, so far, insofar as I am an apostle to the nations, I magnify my ministry, if somehow I may move my own people, Judah, to jealousy, and say some of Judah. For if Judah's rejection proves to be reconciliation of the world, what will Judah's acceptance be but life from the dead? Now, again, I was inserting Judah, but though Judah was and is and still be the natural branches, I am still a wild, it pretty much fits me, wild olive tree that's been grafted into that singular olive tree that is all Israel. And that's been the blindness for the church for 1700 plus years, not understanding that there's a single tree. The tree is Israel and the root is Yeshua. I won't say any names right now, but one time I did have a Jewish brother tell me that the root was the Jews. And I'm like, you're crazy. Because we were friends. I said, if that's not indoctrination into what you've been taught in Messianic Judaism, I don't know what is. So he starts scrambling, trying to find scripture to prove that Judah is the root. And so I quickly go to Revelation. I go, you might want to check this out. Does that say Judah or does that say Yeshua? Then I go back into Isaiah and goes, oh, is that referring to Judah, or is that referring to your king, your coming Messiah? It was about a 5 or 10 minute conversation, because he went back and studied, and like literally the next day he goes, "You're right, dude." I'm like, "Okay, don't ever say that again," because he was a teacher.
So tell us the passages that you're thinking of so that we can all keep up with
type in root. This is the way I find passages, Doug. Okay. I'm gonna.
But I mean, you can
seriously, this is how I do research a lot of times.
You can cite John 4:22, where Jesus is talking to oh goodness, which lady is it? It doesn't really matter, but he says salvation is of the Yehudim. You know, I mean,
that's true. Here, Revelation 5:5. And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David." Okay, I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the churches. I am the root.
Yeah,
and the descendant of David.
That's good. That's good.
Another person, Romans 15. The root of Jesse will come. That ain't Judah.
Yeah, there you go.
So again, not picking on our brother Judah or our Messianic Jewish friends, but no, I'm sorry. You're not the root. We don't feed off of you. Your religion is just as twisted and perverted as much of the Christianity.
So why do you think we have these anti-Semite, anti-Jewish people within the Torah community? I mean, it seems like if anything, those of us who are doing our best to follow Torah, etc., we should be loving Judah, not hating them, and yet we see just the opposite so often. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on it, I think it depends as you're maybe coming out of the traditional Sunday church and you're starting to learn this.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe with the internet, a lot of people don't have that. They don't have the maturity. They're basically, when you start to seeing this, people, they might have been Christians for about 20, 30 years, but I believe you, in a sense, you can kind of almost start over emotionally, spiritually, back at baby level stage. And then you can go through your toddler stage Torah 2s where and I think a lot of those people, because of what happens and who they find as teachers, okay?
Yeah.
They're brand new. This other person is teaching Shabbat. This other person is now teaching what is food or not food. In other words, 100% correct. And this other person is now teaching, in other words, pretty much one book, one story, full Bible teacher. But then this person is ignoring Zechariah 12 and Joel 3:1. That's why I wanted to start with Joel 3:1 and link it up to Zechariah and to Barney. This was my intent all along. And my co-hosts were well aware that to address the anti-Judah sentiment and why it's happening, why it's going to get worse, pray for our brothers and sisters of Judah. Pray for everybody that's within the borders of Israel and around, because it's not going to be at the very end of the age a pleasant place to be. Camp me out over in Gilead and bring me in after King Yeshua has come in.
Well, let me address something regarding some of these people, because I think it can be really hard to know who can we trust, and do I always have to listen to a teacher? And I would say no. I think the key to studying is humility. I really do. The key to studying is humility. All right, because look, just because I went to Israel, etc., doesn't mean that I have any that I have a one up on somebody. What I try to do, the very best of my ability, I try to stay humble, right? And so that when I'm studying, I say, wow, I just discovered this thing. But what about all those other things that I don't even know? And when it comes to things we don't know, there are some things, they're like known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns, okay? And so I've got to be very humble. And I think what happens is a lot of people, they come into this new idea and they become sophomores. A sophomore is basically a wise fool, okay? And the thing about a sophomore is that you can be book smart on a lot of things. But the difference between a sophomore and a senior is experience, wisdom, right? The seniors had some time to get seasoned, and to make a few mistakes and to say, oh, I didn't quite understand that, right? I had the basic answer, but I didn't understand the fullness of it. And that's where I would say that so many of us, and I'll throw myself in there, all right, because I've made these mistakes too. They're kind of rookie mistakes, you know. The older you get, you're like, I better not do that again.
Well, it's not even a rookie.
Humble. You know, we won't get so arrogant about, well, I've got the answers and clearly this has got to be the only way. It's like, just stay humble.
That's why I'm so careful not to be dogmatic on exactly how events. And again, you have your understanding and how you think things will play out, and you're writing a fiction series on this. But you would never, ever put your kingdom status on the line saying, thus saith the Lord.
Of course not. No.
There are certain things, even now, I've softened on the harpazo because of the man-child being harpazo. Okay. So again, there is a harpazo of a man-child. I'm not dogmatic, but I'm with Tony Robinson on this. I'm up to about 99.999% that is that not talking about Yeshua. It doesn't fit. And so there appears to be a harpazo of a man-child. And so that's why I know I'm longer against, you know, as it's taught for the, you know, our brother Nelson, and everybody knows I like Nelson personally, but I listened to his most recent video about whether the tribulation has started on October 2nd. And then he's showing, there's 2 clear verses in the Bible that teach a 7-year tribulation period. And in his only passages were Daniel 9:27 and Revelation 6:1. And I'm going, Daniel 9:27 doesn't even mention anything about tribulation in the first half of the week, just some covenant with the many being confirmed. There's nothing mentioned about tribulation whatsoever. And the last 3.5 years of that, I believe it perfectly dovetails and aligns with Revelation 11 and 13 as far as a time period, and Daniel 12. So you got several witnesses for a 3.5 year period. And Doug, you actually probably would make the argument there that you're going to piece together Revelation 11 and the testimony of the 2 witnesses with the beast having authority for the, and that's where at least you're making a case for a 7-year period based on Scripture. Sure. Nelson was trying to make it based on just now. And again, I love Nelson. I think he's doing a great service to the community. It's just like nails on the chalkboard every time, you know, did the tribulation start? Well, maybe the final 7 years of this age started on October 2nd. Maybe our guest last week, Benjamin Baruch, is correct. And World War III is going to break out in the next day or two. No, Doug, I'm not going to shake my head. No, I'm not until we get to October 31st. I'm not going to shake my head no that some major prophetic event will not occur, because it did last year. And I expected it to occur.
Raise your hand if you think we're in the Great Tribulation, and go ahead and vote, people. Go ahead and.
I don't think anybody.
I don't think we're in the final 7 years or 3.5 years or anything like that.
Well, you said just Great Tribulation.
All right, fine. Anything. It's 3.5 years, 7 years.
That's the problem.
Fine. I would say there's tribulation and then there's Great Tribulation.
Okay, what are you basing that on, scripture-wise?
That there are 3 different time frames listed in the Bible, and they seem to equate to 7 years.
What scripture are you pointing to?
Daniel 7.
There is a 7-year tribulation period.
Daniel 7, Daniel 12, Revelation 11 and 12 and 13, where we see these time frames. So you
Revelation 12, though, doesn't say anything about 7 years.
Revelation 12 has a direct reference to Moed, Moedim, and Veketzi. So that's times and half a time.
I actually meant to say Daniel 12. Daniel 12 mentions
Daniel 12 has it too.
A 7-year period.
It does have a 3.5 year time frame. It does.
Again, you know? And that's why it's important, because scripturally nothing states a 7-year tribulation period. Nothing. Whereas Daniel 12 states a 1260, 1290, 1335, which is right around 3.5 years. We can all agree on that. What has happened, and again, I love my 2 brothers across the screen, but this 7-year tribulation period was penned by Lacunza, okay? And Ribera then developed it. And what was the guy's name that, I always say Miller, it wasn't the Millerites, it was Irving translated it in the 1920s. Darby heard it. Schofield published it, and we all learned it as children. We were all taught this. And again, I may be wrong. This is one of those things that I wouldn't stake my kingdom status on there not being a final 7-year period, because you know what? There's going to be no matter what. The issue is whether or not there's going to be this tribulation period of 3.5 years preceding. So let's just not call it the 7-year tribulation or the period. Why don't we just call it the final 7 years of the age? Or and again, if you want to call it Daniel's 70th week because that's your belief, that's fine. But it's an example of repeating, in my opinion, repeating something that's not scriptural. You just cannot make it.
I feel like sometimes you're splitting hairs over these things, because the ministry of the two witnesses is not going to be a picnic. They're gonna come and disrupt life on planet Earth as we know it to such an extent that when they're finally defeated, the earth is going to rejoice. They can hardly wait. And I do firmly believe that that is going to happen before the Antichrist gets his turn at 3.5 years. So you just do the math, 3.5 and 3.5 is 7. So
that's not, again, that would be, you've got judgment and wrath coming upon the earth from the witnesses.
Sure. I mean, look, it's going to be a lousy time on planet Earth. Let's just put it that way. So let's just call it the lousy. Let's call it the last lousy 7 years. How about that? I'd love to get back to Joel chapter 3, because man, there's such cool stuff in here.
Okay, let's get there.
So I mean, it's really cool, right? So he talks about how he says in verse 3, they've cast lots for my people. They've given a boy his payment and a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they may drink. Indeed, what do you have to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the coasts of Philistia? Will you retaliate against me? But if you retaliate against me swiftly and speedily, I will retaliate against upon your own head, because you have taken my silver and my gold and carried into your temples my prized possessions. Also, the people of Judah and the people of Jerusalem you've sold to the Greeks, that you may remove them far from their borders. So I actually taught on this one time. I think that this is talking about the Syro-Phoenician woman spoken of here by name, Syro-Phoenician, right? This is what it is. Tyre and Sidon, that's Syria and Phoenicia. Okay. And so when Jesus, cast her off and just said, get out of here. And she's like, but even Lord, even the dogs get the crumbs from the table. And he had amazing compassion on her, right? But before that, he wasn't talking to her. And I think it's because of this passage right here. She was the unfortunate recipient being related to those people that went before her. Okay, so then God says, I'm going to sell your sons. And then verse 9, proclaim this among the nations, prepare for war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords. God is taunting the nations. He's saying, okay, guys, let's get ready to rumble. We are going to fight. You better get anything you can and turn it into a sword, because you're going to need it. Okay. And so, he's encouraging the nations. Come on, put up your best, put up your dukes, and let's go for this. All right. Look, let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble and come, all you nations, and gather together all around. Cause your mighty ones to go down there, O Lord. Let the nations be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the surrounding nations. All right. So I think it's both the judgment in the sense that Jesus will kick some major butt, but it's also going to sit on his throne when he comes back in Matthew 25, and he's going to gather all the nations before him. And then he says in verse 13, put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come down, for the winepress is full, the vats overflow, for the wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision. The sun and moon will grow dark, and the stars will diminish their brightness, et cetera, right? So, I mean, there's so much cool stuff in there. But I think this is talking about that final epic battle that's going to take place when Jesus comes back. It's all happening here in the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the Kidron Valley. And just to dovetail with what we've been talking about, we should, of all people, we should be loving the Jewish people. It doesn't mean we love everything they do, no more than they love everything we do. But we should be loving the Jewish people, because God is going to put them and us, the house of Israel, back together. One reason that people hate the doctrine of the two houses is because oftentimes two house people are kind of jerks. They start getting really snooty. They're arrogant. They're like, well, this is, we don't need anything that Judah's taught us. Judah's taught us a lot, and we should be very, very grateful. And God still loves Judah. Okay. And our Lord is still Jewish, right? So there's like a zillion reasons that we should love the Jewish people. So of all people, I really think that we need to be just looking out for what God has done through Judah. So a question is coming from John Padilla. He says, so what is the ramifications of the Valley of Armageddon not being in the Jezreel Valley and the final battle? Well, I suppose at the end of the day, it's all going to turn out, as it turns out, John. But what I would suggest is that if we really want to get specific about what God is talking about, and just to understand how He's put it all together, the Jezreel Valley really has basically nothing to do with the final end times battle. Of course, I mean, people might be driving their tanks in or whatever. Sure, that's all fine. But that's really neither here nor there. The battle that the Bible talks about as being the final battle of the ages is the Battle of Armageddon. It is taking place in Jerusalem. And I guess I would just say this, the implications are that we now have so many scriptures that are saying the same thing versus having sort of these two different theaters of war, one up in the north and one in Jerusalem. We don't have that. We have one theater of war at the very end. The Battle of Armageddon takes place in one place, which is Jerusalem, because that is where it all comes together. So that's how I would see that. I do think it's important if we're going to try to understand how all these things, come back together. So,
Doug, why in the text is God talking about horses and riding on horses and swords instead of nukes? And so you cited already Hal Lindsey.
Hal Lindsey.
Yeah, you cited him in terms of the nukes and things like that. And I see that nukes would be involved at the end, but I don't think the nukes would be right there.
I really don't think nukes are going to be involved at all. I really think that's a fallacy.
Okay.
Now, again, why horses?
Why horses? Yeah.
Well, it's a great question. I don't have the final answer on that by any stretch, but my guess is that there could be something that's just very disrupting. It could be an EMP, electromagnetic burst. So maybe there is some kind of nuclear event that happens up in the atmosphere
from the sun.
Well, not necessarily. Let's think about this. Okay, we're Judah for a second. We're the modern state of Israel. Okay, and the whole world is coming to try to destroy us. Right? Yep. They're driving in their trucks. They're coming in their planes. They're bringing their tanks. This is looking pretty bad. Okay, You're Israel. You have some nukes. Okay, and you're like, well, we can't kill everybody. We don't want to destroy the planet necessarily. How can we stop them? One option, maybe you blow up your nuclear bombs above them so that it completely destroys all their electronics. That's one option. It could also be that we will have a coronal mass ejection from the sun. I mean, I just read that today. There's another one. They're like, this could be the one.
I'm going out in a couple of minutes. I'm going out to check auroras tonight.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they've been saying this for 10, 15 years, but one of these days, I think it's going to happen, and that could certainly cause a lot of problems for our electronics and all our machines and gadgets, so that might be a reason. I mean, I can only speculate, right? But I really don't think that it's going to be some big nuclear bomb and then everybody's face melts off because of a nuclear bomb. I just don't think that's how this thing goes down. Because when a nuclear bomb goes off, guess what? Everybody dies, and that's not what we see. We see Jesus coming back. He's fighting against the world that's coming together to make war against him. This isn't just like, let's drop a bomb and everybody's dead. No, that's a very different ending to this story, right? And I just don't think that's one of the options for how the story is going to end. I think that's kind of people with not a lot of imagination back in the 70s and 80s. And that was the best they could do, but I just think it doesn't do us really good justice to the text. So
my thought is that you have the sixth seal, which is an ELE, but it's it's not an extreme one. It's a temporary type of a situation where you have the sun exploding out this coronal mass ejection. It's going to be like a Carrington event. It'll knock us back for about 4 months. And then at some point in time, we will have the fourth bowl. Okay, so we have the seals, then we have the trumpets, then we have the bowl. So move all the way down to the end. You're in the bowls, you're at the fourth one. That seems to be the sun kicking off this major micronova. And that would explain if we had something like that, we would still have access to nukes because they're all underground. Okay. But on the other hand, if it's a coronal mass ejection, you would be bombed back to the Stone Age. You would need horses, you would need swords, and it would make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's biblically, it just lays out because all right, I'll just throw this one at you. The fourth trumpet is about the sun getting more dust collected on it because a third of the sun, a third of the moon, third of everything. And right now, the galactic magnetic current.
I'm biting my tongue, just so you know.
Yeah, that's fine. It's coming through, whether you want it to or not. It's coming through, and it's going to collect dust. It's like a Swiffer duster. So basically, there's this play between seals and then trumpets and then bowls. But by the fourth bowl, it looks like a CME that would be a Carrington plus 100, and it would just.
I think we can agree. Personally, I don't know where in the world you get dust on the sun. I think that's weird, frankly.
It's there. It's been proven. I can show you the documentation for it.
I still think it's weird. I don't think there's dust on the sun, but that's my humble opinion for what it's worth. But what we do agree on is that there will be some event with the sun. Okay, it says that the sun is it says that it's going to scorch people, right? I think we can agree on that one, right? It says that the sun is going to scorch people, and I think that very well could be some kind of a coronal mass ejection, the likes of which we've never seen. That there could be some nuclear, or not nuclear, but some sun event that really wipes out our electronics, and we have to resort to the old ways.
In Revelation 7:16, it lists the big four. So it's food, it's water, the sun, and the third one with the sun, where the horrible situation, it literally says "sun fall on us," but the translators couldn't say that. I mean, because the sun doesn't fall on us, but the energy of the sun does. It's protons. Literally, we're going to be bathed in protons
16,
tonight.
In 16, it says that the sun is going to scorch men.
Yeah,
right? They're going to curse God as a result.
That corresponds to Revelation 7:16 when they're coming out. He describes you won't have to do this again.
Sure. Yeah. So it's going to be pretty crazy. But yeah, so the Valley of Jehoshaphat, it's the valley where God will judge. What is he doing? He's protecting the Jewish people, right? That was really the main impetus of our show here. Is to demonstrate that God is going to protect the Jewish people. God is not angry at the Jewish people. He's not looking to get a pound of flesh from the Jewish people. Not at all. He loves them. And I'm going to go out on a branch here, on a limb here, and just say something that, I really believe that God has faithful believers, maybe not Jesus believers, but there are people within Judaism who are righteous, they're faithful to him, and one way or another, he's going to work it out so that they're in the kingdom. Now, I do believe that everyone has to come through Jesus. I really do believe that. Okay. But I think we've kind of gotten stuck on you have to invite Jesus into your heart kind of thing. And if you haven't done that, well, pretty much everyone's going to hell. And that's how we have, the 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust, according to when I was growing up as a Baptist, they pretty much all went to hell. Mother Teresa went to hell, and all these people that have been serving God pretty faithfully, but they're all going to hell because they didn't have the formula. So I would dare suggest that maybe our formula is incorrect, and that God might be doing something just a little bit bigger and wiser than we can imagine. All right. And so this is why we need to be very, very careful that we don't throw the Jews under the bus. We want to ride on the bus with them. Okay. Because in fact, we want to get on the bus and say, take me where you're going. Right. That's really what we want to happen. You're muted, by the way, brother.
Scott, talk.
You're muted, brother.
That would be an example of again, 100% sort of your statement, Doug, about everybody being cast into hell.
Yeah.
Well, everybody is going to Sheol. Everybody is going to Hades. let's talk about the lake of fire. Okay.
Yeah, our
Okay,
nomenclature is messed
The
us up.
second resurrection, the
Yeah.
text does not say that everybody part of the second resurrection will be cast into the lake of fire. This is not universalism. Doug just said, and it's certainly not universalism that I would ever advocate. You want to be part of the first resurrection. You don't want to be part of the second resurrection when the books are opened. And to Doug's point, is there, again, there's passages in Hebrews about, death, then the judgment. Well, it does, is there an opportunity for a person outside of the time domain? Again, there are things we don't know and that we should not speculate on. Why don't we wait till we get to the next stage before we start deciding the eternal fate of individuals at the second resurrection? Because
Amen.
I think my buddies Curtis and Michael did a great teaching series on this, and they did say we are way above our pay grade, but the scepter and the rod is the bride. In other words, on the throne, you'd have to listen to it, Joel. And I can show you in Revelation 3 where one of the ecclesias is called the rod and the scepter. In other words, that part of the ruling body in the next stage will be the bride. It's not going to be the entire house of Israel. It's not going to be what we call the church. It's not going to be all of Israel. There's going to be, I believe, the overcomers, those that are selected and chosen by the Father. It's a big house. It's a big country.
Yeah.
So again, I do believe there will be some. I certainly wouldn't pick me if I was Yeshua or to be the bride, but I think some of that is going to be, that judgment will be rendered. Not that anybody could usurp and overthrow King Yeshua's will, but I do believe that there will be on the throne at the second resurrection will be those selected as the bride. So I could be wrong, and I certainly wouldn't stake an ounce or a iota of kingdom status on what I just said. So before anybody starts calling me a heretic and saying all kinds of crazy stuff. So
Amen.
Are there any more questions?
Well, just H. Shalom pointed this out that sunscreen won't help with that.
No, you'll have to go underground. It'll be that bad. Your fillings will melt into your head. And so that kind of describes what Zechariah 14 is talking about, where if the sun is melting you, you literally will have your fillings melt. Your brain will almost fry off this. It'll be horrible. In fact,
I really don't think it's the sun that melts people, though. I really think that they are
protons.
They're in the direct presence of Jesus, and that's why they're melting.
Oh,
without the veil.
Yeah. The sun thing happens before that time.
Okay,
though.
yeah. Okay.
I'm saying you need to be underground because it says in Revelation 6:12, go underground. Okay. But then at some point in time, Yeshua shows up. It's not a nuke. It is Yeshua's breath, basically, just taking people out.
Like you said, Revelation 6 says it instructs us to go underground. Am I thinking of the correct
everybody?
verse?
No, everybody.
It says that the kings of this earth are hiding out. The
kings and the generals and the slaves and the poor, everybody. It literally in the text, everybody goes underground. So you'll know when the sixth seal hits, because everybody goes underground.
Yeah, that's when God opens up the veil between heaven and earth, and that literally is the second coming. I mean, it's
we'll agree to disagree.
All right, we can agree to disagree. That's
maybe one of these days, Joel will come around to being correct on that understanding that he has.
We'll see. 2025 is going to be a huge year, guys. Huge year.
Nobody's disputing that.
Somebody's going to look stupid by the end of 2025. If it's me, I'm fine.
Well, I'm not making any predictions about this stuff.
So long as you're not predicting again.
I'm not predicting we're going in. I'm predicting that it's going to be a difficult year.
Don't predict.
Oh, no. I mean, it is. You already know, Scott, that it's going to be
but
year.
Again, we could have a difficult year in America with it just being a political situation.
Worldwide.
Again, Joe, I believe we're at the end of the age. Okay, so I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, I know. You're in my window area. I know. The main thing is the UN, okay, that treaty, that pact with the future, that's just jibber jabber. and it's going to set up the mark of the beast and the system of the beast and things like that. So there's hundreds of things going on. I'm arguing one aspect, which is the sun, which is the auroras that I'm going to see in about 10 minutes here. But yet there are 50 or 100 or 150 different parameters that are all squeezing us in towards some kind of a time frame coming up.
Awesome. Well, very cool. I just wanted to yeah.
Please don't leave.
I want to say something about Joel.
I'm so glad you're here with me. Please don't leave.
No. Joel's going nowhere, but because my wife says, you know what, that Joel guy, he's just the happiest person every week. We need a happy person.
I'm alive. You know,
no. Cool. Sometimes Doug can be quite the curmudgeon, and other times I can be. And so we need, when we especially bring a guest on, like we're bantering tonight. We're all friends. You know, right. You bring a guest on that doesn't know this, and sometimes Doug and or I can be frosty. So it's good having Joel around.
They are our guests, and I try to treat them that way.
Yeah.
Well,
let me finish.
Invite them. Let them know there may be some extreme cross-examination.
Okay, so why did I invite John on the show? Because Doug wanted him, near-death experiences. But we had
that was an awesome show, dude.
That was great. Yeah, but he was ready to go. Sometimes our guests aren't ready to go. You know, they haven't really thought it through. You know, you have to kind of be a Jordan Peterson to come on the show.
Well, you got to prepare them and let them know.
I try.
Well, let me close this with this. This is Joel 3 verses 20 and 21. But Judah shall abide forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. For I will acquit them of the guilt of bloodshed, whom I had not acquitted. For the Lord dwells in Zion. Right? Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it really is. Right? So look, whatever people's view on Judah is and the modern state of Israel. Okay, they've made their share of blunders like the rest of us, but God's going to acquit them. Isn't that good news? He's going to acquit them. And how is he doing it? It's through the righteous and wonderful act and sacrifice of Yeshua. That's how. All these things that God's doing are made possible, you know, through the blood of Jesus. I remember back to Sesame Street. You know, Sesame Street is brought to you by the letter C. You know, well, all of these things that God is doing is brought to you by the blood of Yeshua, right? It's all sponsored. Our sponsor is Jesus, right? He's the one that paid it all so that all these things could happen. Now, you don't have to necessarily understand all the theology. In other words, you don't need to understand all the inner workings to do these things. I mean, you ever shopped at this huge website called Amazon.com? You know, I mean, it's pretty cool, right? And I actually got to tour one of their warehouses one time. It was unreal. I mean, the amount of logistics that go into that thing and the robots that are zooming around and all the different stuff and the conveyor belts. But do I need to understand any of that stuff? Nope, none of it. I don't need to know. I don't need to know who works there. I don't need to know anything about their supply chain or their databases or anything, right? All I need to do is find the product I want and put it in my shopping cart and pay for it. And then it shows up, right? Like magic, right? So look, God has revealed the inner workings to some degree of, you know, this big machine that he's made called salvation, right? And that's cool. And I you know, we come on here, we love to geek out on it. It's really fun. Okay, but you don't have to understand the inner workings of salvation to be saved. That's the cool thing about it. No more than you have to understand how the Amazon system works. It doesn't matter. You just buy the thing and it shows up. So if you call on the name of the Lord, you'll be saved. That's what's so beautiful. And when John Burke was on and we talked about a lot of these near-death experiences, that was the overwhelming agreement. He's interviewed 70 people. I personally have looked at like 35 or 40 video testimonials of people that have died and come back. I mean, he's John has definitely done a whole lot more than I have, but still, the overwhelming sense is that if you call on the name of the Lord, you'll be saved. And man, I'm so glad about that. And I'm excited about what God is doing in Judah, through Judah, for Judah. And I'm just waiting for that day when they finally say, Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai. The hard part, though, is, for the last 2,000 so years, they have not been that warm toward Jesus. They have been at the
You
short.
can't blame them.
Oh, I know.
You cannot blame them.
Put a cross on your chest and go rape and murder Jews.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. They've been at the short end of the stick from Christians, primarily, who have blamed them for killing Jesus and all these other things. You've got, of course, the Holocaust, right? That was a Christian thing. Let's be clear about that, right? Germany was a Christian nation. Hitler was a Christian leader. And and most of the Christians in Europe didn't really care. They're like, well, we don't like Hitler, but at least he's taking care of that Jewish problem. Okay, so yeah, they haven't been too excited to accept Jesus. But what's going to happen is that as they come through the tribulation and all of their weapons fail, they run out of bullets. Okay, they're running out of nukes and missiles and everything. Everything's gone. There's nothing more to defend themselves. They're going to finally say, wait a second. What's going on? Where is Messiah? And then they're going to finally come to terms. They're going to realize. They're going to say, right? And it says there in Zechariah 12, Vehibitu elai et asher dakaru. They will look to me, the one whom they pierced. All right. And when they do that, they're not looking on him with their visual eyes or their literal eyes, but they're looking to him in the sense of save us, right? And they're going to do that. And it says that they're going to weep. Every family by itself, they're going to weep. I think they're going to weep for 2 days. That's my personal take on that. But nevertheless, they're going to weep for a good long time. And then when they finally sort of come out of that stupor, they come out of that place of mourning, then they're going to say, wait a second. We don't need to weep. We can call on him, right? We just have to say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. And the moment they do that, Jesus is, his ears are going to perk up. He's like, did you call me? Did you just say Baruch haba b'shem Adonai? Oh, that is so cool, right? And that's when he's going to rip open the sky and he's going to come and he is going to save them. He's going to fight for them like you've never, ever seen. It is going to be so epic and so grand. And so, look, the winning scenario is when Jesus comes and he defends the Jewish people. So figure this out. Which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be, talking trash against the Jewish people, or do you want to be like, I think I want to hang out on this side of the fence, because that's whom Jesus is going to side with, and does side with. So I definitely want to be there.
Scott.
No, I was just going to say again, it's a balance, and I see how people have become maybe jealous, just as Isaiah 11 says, that envy, that jealousy, that those bad feelings between. And Joel, you're looking quizzical. I mean, it specifically says.
I'm thinking Romans
between Ephraim and Judah will go away. We won't have that tension anymore between Judah and Christianity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will disappear when all of Judah, because all of Judah still, a bunch of them live up in New York. Some of them even live in Birmingham, Alabama. They used to have their own country club here because the racist policies in Birmingham, the Birmingham Country Club, wouldn't let them in. So what the local Jews do? They went and built their own. and so now they let us go in, so we can go play there if we want to. And But again, that was sort of my heart tonight is yes, we are those that are new to this or might be in that infant or toddler stage. There's no doubt you're an Israelite, and I get it. It can be like nails on the chalkboard when only Judah is being called Israel. Once you've learned this, God bless the chosen people. Well, yes, Judah is chosen, but so are you, and so am I. And they're no more or less chosen. They just have a different part in this redemptive plan.
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, David Heavener next week. So David is kind of like a not a Rob Skiba guy, but I'm blanking on the guy that died recently. That is kind of the spiritual warfare type guy. Russ Dizdar. He's kind of in that vein. Great guy. You'll love him. David Heavener.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
be
we'll look forward to that. Thank you, everybody. I hope everyone, if you're going to celebrate or observe the Yom Kippur this coming Saturday, I hope everyone has an easy fast. And of course, I hope you enjoy Sukkot when we get going with that. So until next time, God bless and always